Um, yeah, I think that's really the $1 million question now is how do we reset as a humanity so that these children have a future that includes their own children. Um, your fertility journey is one of those statistics, right? And so we now have 1 in 3 males infertile by sperm count, and we have 1 in 4 females infertile just by polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is only one of the many forms of female infertility. And so we are failing to be able to procreate as a society. This is how we go extinct. It's actually not cancer that causes extinction; it's the failure to reproduce that leads to that. And our current statistics are terrifying that we may only have 60 to 80 years left as a human species based on the rate of infertility layered on top of the rate of chronic disease and the accelerated rate of aging, basically, i.e. the shortened lifespans as expected in these next few decades. That's unacceptable, right? Like we are spiritual beings here with eons of experience, and I think we're showing up right now to change the trajectory. If I didn't think that, then I wouldn't bother with this podcast or anything else. We inherently know how to change directions, and we have the science that's already there. We've got 30 years of science to prove on which direction we should go, which is nature. We already have hundreds of years of evidence of the crisis of the empiric model of colonialism and its extractive models of human slavery, whether we're talking about slavery to children in militaries all the way to slavery of cobalt mines in Africa so that everybody can have a cheap cell phone in the Western world, to trace mineral mines in Africa that are feeding the solar panels so that somebody can get carbon credits over in the West, so that their wealth and they're being green and they're doing something good for the planet. And like, we are so disconnected at that macro level that your child at 6 years old is moving into a place of complete isolation from a planetary level and a humanitarian level. And so we need to devise space really for that child to refine itself. And if we keep trying to fix the problems at a micro level, I think we're going to distract the souls that are showing up right now to be the other thing. We don't have to go fix the future. We need to allow those coming through right now to be the future that we all know in our hearts is possible. And so this is a challenge because in me as a wounded male, a wounded masculine energy, and I also have the feminine within me. So I've got this perhaps unwounded feminine that wants to nurture and create and procreate and all these things. And I've got this wounded masculine that feels a burden of everything's broken, I need to fix it. And that's its value system. If I'm not fixing it, then I'm not worth anything. And I started this podcast saying that I'm a dude who likes to build things. So I'm extremely prone to this wounded masculine behavior of run around and build a bunch of things and fix everything. It's a much different attitude to take, and it's a much different spiritual discipline to move into a space of emergence of the future rather than micromanaging the future. And so now I've got teams of people around me in the for-profit and nonprofit world that are really trying to hold space and pour nurturing energy through. So a true divine masculine state of holding space for that which is already possible to emerge rather than be done, or done to the future child. And I believe that your 6-year-old is part of a group of souls coming through. More children will be born in Africa and India over the next decade than any other previous decade. But following that, if we don't change direction, those numbers will start shrinking. Africa and India are pretty much our last place of human fertility. All of the Western world is diminishing in its fertility. The East is now diminishing in its fertility, and that includes India. Starting to see that already, and it includes the southeast parts of Asia, and it certainly includes China, which is in a massive shrinking phase of its population. So really, it's Africa and parts of Africa that are still having population growth, and the sperm counts actually increased over the last 3 decades in Africa, whereas it was collapsing elsewhere. I think, when you look at the numbers, it's not great. They're actually now at the average sperm count of the West, but they used to be very low due to, the African countries used to be very low in their sperm counts largely due to malnutrition. So as nutrition began to improve, sperm count started improving. Unfortunately, now what's being layered on top is chemical farming and agriculture that was at the root of the collapse of sperm counts elsewhere. So we have this little decade right now where Africa is now at 48 million sperm per milliliter, which is the same number as we see in the West, which means 1 in 3 males are infertile in both locations. But one place was improving while the other one was decrementing to that space. So I think we're just on the bubble. If we don't solve for a new way of being connected to nature in Africa over these next 10 years, I think the whole species is likely to go into its senescence and into its extinction event. But we have all the tools in place to allow Africa to become Africa. Africa is the birthplace of all species. This is the birth canal of all biodiversity on the planet. It runs from Durban, South Africa to Giza, Egypt. That meridian is, classically with Ethiopia kind of sitting in the middle of that meridian. That's where the Rift Valley is. That's where all biodiversity of the planet sprung forth. Your country of South Africa holds 2/3 of the genetics of the planet in a single country. It's astonishing how generative Africa is as a continent of life. If there is a birth canal on this planet, it's there. Directly behind that energetic line is, if you go right straight through the planet to the other side of the planet, is Hawaii. And Hawaii, in its indigenous history, is understood to be the umbilicus, or the belly button, the umbilical cord for humanity. And so I find it fascinating. I lived in Hawaii for a brief time, and then find myself in Africa for the first time just months after that experience. And the idea that these ancient indigenous cultures and our anthropology has understood the energy of the earth, this belly button coming through Hawaii and then somehow delivering nutrients to a continent on the other side. Energetically, that was the birth canal of all things. I find it goosebumpy, phenomenal that these two indigenous wisdoms knew this somehow, not having known what was happening on the other side of the planet, perhaps, but for their historical ancestral, data that was stored in the DNA, perhaps. But this is a planet that births life. And whether you can wrap your head around or even start to believe me that there's an umbilical cord and a birth canal to this planet, that's up to you to decide. But as an audience, I think we can agree that life out of Africa is abundant, and it's the only place that we see keystone species still surviving. We've hunted all of the other keystone species to extinction. Keystone species are critical for waterways, soil systems, and life. Without them, we lose those biologies very quickly. When we try to become the keystone species, which we've tried to do all over the world, we destroy the soil and water systems. Why is that? Why are we not behaving like a keystone species? Because it sure looks like we have the power, but why do we not have the abundant result? It's because of this cancer-like phenomenon. It's in our belief that we are separate from nature, that we have become a cancer rather than the medicine for the planet. But with this simple change in philosophy, a simple change in understanding of self-identity, we can shift from being the cancer to being the therapeutic agent, the co-creative species that would shepherd this world into a completely amazing abundant state. We already know how to regrow water systems. We already know how to regrow soil systems. It's called regenerative agriculture. It's called regenerative river system management. It's called keystone species. It's called, grassland restoration. And so all of these have been proven at millions and billions of acres globally, literally. And so we already have not only the science, we have the mechanism, and we just now need the social will, which is going to take a change in the social philosophy of who are we. And if we are going to continue to believe ourselves separate from nature and in combat with her for limited resources, and in the scarcity model that happens in separation, it will take it to its demise. If we reconnect, we're going to find out that nature is inherently abundant, not scarce. For 4 billion years, life has been emerging at more and more biodiversity and more intelligence with every single expansion of biodiversity. More biodiversity, more intelligence within a single organism, only if there's more abundance of species within that single organism. Why are humans so intelligent? It's because we have a colon that is specifically designed to hold more species of bacteria and fungi and yeast, et cetera, than any other colon in the history of life on Earth. That's fascinating to me. We only became intelligent until we had an anatomy that allowed Earth to be birthed within us. Our soil system of the colon holds more biodiversity than any other colon. Fascinating. And then you find out that bacteria and fungi within the gut actually speak directly to the neurons within our brain. That's mind-blowing. And that's now been proven. UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, UCSD, San Diego, and UC Berkeley went into a really beautiful, three-pronged approach to understanding gut microbiome stuff in the last decade. And this microimaging revealed something astonishing, which was the neurons in the gut lining, which are enormous in number. There's more neurons in your gut than are in the brain of a dog. And so there's a huge, billions of nerves that are in the gut lining. And we always assumed that there was this gut barrier that was critical to be maintained, and nothing could go past that, or else it would be out in the world and be diseased. What happened with the microimaging, that technology that has come around in this last decade, is we could see that those nerve fibers were reaching outside of the gut lining to directly communicate with the bacteria and fungi sitting upon those nerve endings.
Wow.
That's new science. We don't even know the implications of that, but we know the results of that. We are an intelligent being because of the biodiversity that speaks directly to us and through us. I think it's fascinating that the human brain is not capable of coming up with an idea. The human brain is only a central processing unit chip that directs electricity to and fro. It can't initiate the information. And so my creativity, my capacity to have a new thought is my connection with nature. And we see this in major depression. The very first symptom of depression is a loss of curiosity and creativity. And we start to die in our creative capacity. And when we're not creating, we feel disconnected from self. And when we feel disconnected from self, we become homicidal and suicidal. To feel like self, to feel connected to self, you actually have to be in connection to a nature within yourself. Because yourself is not a human, yourself is an ecosystem of the earth speaking through a single organism. I am earth. I am speaking for the trees. I am speaking for the soil and water of the world because I am the soil and water of the world. I have an anatomy uniquely designed so that I would be not just the soil systems, but the river systems of the earth. My vascular tree looks exactly like the rivers of the earth. And so I've got the rivers within me. I have the soil within me, and those energies that are water and carbon and the way they dance through a whole organism of 70 trillion human cells with 1.4 quadrillion bacteria with 14 quadrillion mitochondria. That's me. I'm in a freaking ecosystem in the quadrillions of organisms that are co-creating life within this finite space that I would call a human body. Earth is speaking through me. I am Earth. It is me. And so are you. And so is the other 8 billion people here. We are, as a species, the voice box and the hands and the feet of nature. And nature is ready to speak through us and do something phenomenal. We can be the gardeners back into that Garden of Eden that is spoken of at the beginning of times. And I was just spent all weekend studying ancient Northern Africa and the ecosystems collapses and restorations that have happened for 150,000 years in North Africa that have now been mapped very carefully with genetics and core samples of the earth and all these phenomenal sciences that have come about. But for 150,000 years, we can now map back these cycles of abundance and scarcity, deserts and booming forests and all of this that have happened over that course of human history. The San people, the indigenous peoples of this zone that you live in, have 100,000 year, oral history. The Khoisan, somewhere in that 40,000 year to 100,000 year history in those different groups. The Maori people of New Zealand, or the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, or the First Nations tribes of North America, all have 40,000 year histories. So the San people, 100,000 years, the rest 40,000 years. We can say that with great confidence that we've been here through a lot of ups and downs ecologically. I don't believe that climate change is the extinction event that we're waiting for. Climate change is something that has been happening since the beginning of time on this planet. The issue is, are we undermining the ability of the planet to bloom again? Right now, we're in a desertification mode of the planet. It's disappearing. Is our behavior truncating the capacity of this world to now regenerate, which is what it always does? After every great extinction is a massive rebirth, and the species are more diverse and the intelligence at a higher level with each of those re-expressions. So we are now at a re-expression moment on the planet. It will bloom again, with or without us, is the question. Human behavior right now is keeping her pressed down so she can't bounce up again. She can't do her natural springtime regrowth because of our cancer-like behavior on the planet, for the breaking of the carbon water cycles that we're doing at the global level and at the cellular level within us. And so there's this opportunity for us to really, become the greatest thing that's ever happened here, because we are the expression of nature, and nature will express itself new through us, and we will reach a higher level of intelligence if we choose to stay and play.